Bulls Nation, welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Weekly. We've had an up and down week so far for the Chicago Bulls. Started things off very positively, ended things very, very positively. But in the middle of that week was absolutely dreadful games from the Chicago Bulls. So in that retrospect, we have some very good positives to talk about, but we have some very big negatives to talk about. So without further ado, let's talk about the Chicago Bulls Weekly, the previous week, and the upcoming week to look forward to in this video. Let's do it. What's up, everybody? It's the Aidan Sports Show, and welcome back to another video. Today, we've got a Chicago Bulls Weekly episode where we look at the previous week that the Chicago Bulls have just encountered, and we look forward to the upcoming week that the Chicago Bulls will have to face, and what I expect out of that week from the Chicago Bulls. But before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Aidan Sports Show YouTube channel, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls. How did their week go? What were you expecting out of this week? And overall, just what do you think we can get out of next week through some very tough games, if I do say so myself, for the Chicago Bulls? With that being said, the first thing we should be looking for is the results of last week's game. So, we kick things off against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Chicago Bulls got their revenge game, as I like to call it, against the OKC Thunder, beating them in a convincing fashion by 123-102, beating them very convincingly. And one of those performances I was very proud of, knowing despite the injury concerns that the Thunder had, we got one over them that against a team that probably shouldn't have even beaten us in the first place, but we gave up a really bad lead, and that's what happens, and in the end, we got our revenge. Then we had the next game. The next game was against the San Antonio Spurs. This was the only game I've ever, out of all the Chicago Bulls game reactions I've made, not had a structure to a video. I just turned the camera on and ranted about the team. That's how bad this performance was against the San Antonio Spurs. That game ended 106-99, where the Chicago Bulls blew a 23-point lead within the second half of the game and nearly lost by double digits to the San Antonio Spurs. A very frustrating game, and by far one of the worst performances I've seen out of the Chicago Bulls. Then we move forward to a very good team in the Denver Nuggets, a team where the Chicago Bulls had on the ropes for the entirety of the game up until the fourth quarter, where once again, the Chicago Bulls blew a very, very comfortable lead, around 13-point lead within that fourth quarter, losing to the Denver Nuggets in overtime, 131-127. The Bulls played well against a very good team. However, all it takes is one quarter for Denver to play well in. So they played all for the rest of the game. All it took was one quarter for them to bounce back and win that game. But then we end things positively against a Detroit Pistons side that has been struggling, but did come into this game, I believe, winning against the Houston Rockets, and I believe against the OKC Thunder. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those are the two games that they did come in winning against, but the Bulls handled this very comfortably, beating the Detroit Pistons 100-86. So those are the four games that we played. We went 2-2 this week for the Chicago Bulls. So on the face of it, you could say it was a pretty average week. But overall, I see a lot more negatives out of this week than positives. I expected the Bulls to go 3-1 this week. We did go 2-2, which is not bad, but it's not what I asked for. And if we're trying to reach the playoffs, that is something that is not acceptable, to be honest, especially when you're losing to a Spurs side that had no DeRozan, no LaMarcus Aldridge, and basically we were up by 23 points within that game. So yes, an extremely frustrating week for the Chicago Bulls in that retrospect, but overall 2-2 is not really too bad for the Chicago Bulls. Now let's look into the awards that we're going to give for the Chicago Bulls. And to be honest, this is one of the hardest weeks of giving out awards that I've ever done. So these three awards that we look up to is the must improve or disappointment of the week, where we look at everybody that played this week and discuss the most disappointing player. The sixth man of the week, where we look at that bench and we decide who was the best bench player overall that week. and of course the player of the week. And this is very tough for me because at the end of the day, can I just say this week for the Chicago Bulls, the bench has been dreadful, absolutely dreadful, and I'm not even going to hide from that. The bench on this team since those changes were made have been awful. The bench really took a massive hit from starting Satoransky and Thaddeus Young, but in the end we had to do that to generate good starts, because at the end of the day we were giving ourselves a shot in the foot for starting so dreadfully in most of our games this season. We had to put Thaddeus Young and Satoransky in there to try and get those starts to start more positively within games. But in doing that, you sacrificed a lot of that bench. So that bench was really bad this week. However, we will move on. The disappointment of the week, in my opinion, this week was Coby White. Outside that Denver game where he dropped 17 points, I believe 2 assists and 4 rebounds, Coby White has been pretty ordinary this week, I should say. I don't think he's been dreadful. There's not a game where he's had like 3 points or something like that. Probably outside the Detroit Pistons game where he had 4 points. But overall, I feel like he has been the biggest letdown this week for the Chicago Bulls. And again, I'm mainly targeting that Detroit Pistons game because I thought it was really bad out of him. But overall, he doesn't have that. He has a lot of competition to face, to be honest. You have the likes of Denzel Valentine, didn't have a great week. Ryan Archie-Diacono played more minutes, didn't have a terrific week. And the sixth man of the week, which I'll give to later, overall didn't have a very good week at all as well. But that's what you have to give up if you're a bench player on this team. Even when you're not playing well, I guess sometimes you would need to have some little bit of recognition for your players and the team overall. So I would say that's fair enough. He is the must improve. It's not by much, but at the end of the day, that is what I'm going to target out for the Chicago Bulls. I feel like Coby White needs to improve for a situation where he should be doing more than I believe what he is doing. That's all I can say. He needs to step up his production, in my opinion. The sixth man of the week, and this is by the slimmest of margins, I'm going to give it to Wendell Carter Jr. I know that might be the biggest controversial call I could ever say, but besides Otto Porter, who had a 22-point game off of the bench, no one else really stepped up to the occasion. Wendell Carter was probably the most consistent player. There was one game we had 10 points and 9 rebounds. There was another game we had 9 and 9. There was a game we had 6 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds. Overall, not terrific, I guess you could say, but it is slightly better than everybody else. Otto Porter had one 22-point game. Coby White had one 17-point game. But outside of that, 3 points, 4 points, turnover city. So I really can't give it to anybody else, to be honest. I wish I could, but it is Wendell Carter. And this is not, I reckon this is not a sixth man of the week award that anybody should be proud of accomplishing, because the week has been very bad and the Chicago Bulls bench has been pretty poor. But regardless of that, I guess you could say Wendell Carter was the best bench player based on consistency this week, but he's definitely not the best bench performer. Otto Porter probably has the best game out of everybody on that bench. Out of the 4 games, he had 1 good game. So in the end, I don't know, you can pick your poison, pick whoever you like, but in the end, no one really had a great week for the Chicago Bulls off of that bench. And the player of the week would be, once again, the one and only Zach Levine. He had a 32-point game, I believe, this week. He had a 40-point game. He had a 28 or 29-point game. And he had an 18-point game this week. So overall, I think it's pretty clear who was the player of the week for the Chicago Bulls. Overall, I think the starting lineup has very much kept us in a lot of games within this period. I think they've stepped up very, very well. So I think out of everybody, the starting lineup probably deserves the most credit from this week for the Chicago Bulls. I thought Satoransky played very well this week. I thought Zach Levine, of course, as usual, plays well. I thought Patrick Williams was probably the weakest link in that starting lineup, but he's a rookie, so you let those things slide because he still has a lot to learn. Larry Markkinen, I feel like ever since he's come back, he's not really done anything wrong to really take away that spot, and I thought he's played decently in some of these games as well. There was one awful game he had. I believe he had like 4 points or something like that, but outside of that, he's played okay. And Thaddeus Young does what he does. He's just the standard at the moment. He's the model professional of consistency for this team. And once again, this week proves it. So the starting lineup deserves a lot of the credit. And the bench, in my opinion, if I could pick the must improve, I would pick the entirety of the bench. But regardless of that, it is what it is, and you just take it on the chin. Zach Levine's the player of the week. I think that's pretty straightforward. And that is it for the awards. Now with these awards, we must look into the future of the Chicago Bulls, and we must discuss the upcoming games that we have to face and what I truly expect out of these games. So, we have 3 games to look forward to for the Chicago Bulls this week. Obviously, the Detroit Pistons game just ended yesterday, and we have a back-to-back against the best team in the NBA, in my opinion, at this point in time, the Utah Jazz. That is going to be a very interesting game. Utah have been shooting at a career level at the three-point line, so this is going to be a very tough team to overcome. But one small slip up from the Utah Jazz, the Bulls do find ways to somewhat stay in these games. We could stay in this game. In the end, one slow shooting quarter for the Utah Jazz could be what the Bulls need to get a hold and win a game like this. But again, we have not beaten a really good team in a long time. I think the last good team I remember us beating was the Indiana Pacers, who I believe are lower than us at this point in time, or they're above us. They're the 9th seed and we're the 10th seed. So they're around the same level as us. The Utah Jazz is a whole different level than what the Indiana Pacers are. So this will be one of the toughest games we face all season. But if we compete, we have a chance. All I want is that chance, because one of these games against a good team, we will take our chance and win a game. I'm not sure when it's going to be, but it has to be sooner or later. We just haven't beaten a really good team yet, so there needs to be a chance that we get to do that. Then we've got the Cleveland Cavaliers. I believe by this time, it will be 1 day away from the trade deadline. So maybe they would have a trade by then to get Andre Drummond away. And maybe there'll be some players to come back for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we don't really know what Cleveland Cavaliers side we may see by this upcoming period. We may also not know what type of team the Bulls will be towards this game. This is going to be a very interesting period for the Chicago Bulls where we look at the upcoming week, because there could be a whole different team for the Chicago Bulls. Let's be honest. We just don't know. It can happen. It may not. I don't think it will, but it may happen. So let's just see what happens. And that Cleveland Cavaliers side, look, it's an unpredictable game at this point in time, but if every single thing remains the same, I expect the Bulls to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. Then we got the San Antonio Spurs. I assume DeMar DeRozan, I'm not sure if he's back or not. I haven't kept up with the Spurs since we lost to them, but I assume DeRozan would be back for this game, which means the Chicago Bulls will face a tougher Spurs side, but hopefully they will have that pride to bounce back and beat the San Antonio Spurs after what they did to us before. I respect a lot of things about the Spurs. I think their coach is the greatest coach, one of the greatest coaches in NBA history. I like the Spurs and I like watching them, but at the end of the day, I'm a Bulls fan and I want this Bulls team to have some pride in what they gave up to the San Antonio Spurs in the last game. So I would love nothing more to beat the Spurs in this, I guess, revenge game. Maybe it is a revenge game if we can get that win. And that is it for the Chicago Bulls. Those are the 3 games. And to be honest, I would love to win 2 out of these games, but my heart is telling me we're only going to win 1. If we lose all 3, I'll be devastated. But my heart is telling me 1, my brain is telling me 2. So let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts about the 3 games that the Chicago Bulls have? Do you think we will win 2, or do you think we will win 1? Which games will we win? And overall, will we see a different team by the end of this week? We have 1 week of the trade deadline remaining. I believe we've made a trade for Lonzo Ball that got declined. So in the end, we are trying to do something. The question is, will one of these trades that we are discussing for get over the line? Will we get a player into this team to push for that playoffs? Or will everything remain the same? By the end of this week, we'll have our answer, but it's a very good question to ask. So let's just find out what exactly we have in store. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. At the point of this recording, the Utah Jazz game will only be a few hours away. So hopefully get ready for that game. I'll be mentally ready for that game, and hopefully we will see what ends up coming out of it in the long term. Hopefully the Chicago Bulls somehow, some way, by hook or by crook, find a way to win. And hopefully we don't blow another lead, because I just can't stand blowing any more leads with this team. Take care and peace.